You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good morning. I don't think I've ever not heard any noise up here. Welcome to the 19th annual September 11th Remembrance Ceremony on this 20th anniversary of the attack. I'm Tom Mahoney, and it's my humble honor to be your fire chief. I'd like to recognize some of the attendees with us today, our Board of Selectmen, our Branford State Delegation, the Branford elected officials, including the RTM members of the Board of Police and Fire Commissioners, Board of Finance, our town employees, our Rotary Club, who's donated our after fare, and the Branford High School students. On behalf of our community, thank you for joining us as we gather to remember and honor the lives and the bravery of those lost in the murderous terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. On that vivid, clear blue day, not unlike this one, America was attacked by radicalized individuals. Those actions resulted in the deaths of 2,977 innocent people as they went about their day. In response, thousands of emergency workers rushed into action. Sadly, 412 of our selfless first responders lost their lives while saving others. Since 2001, over 2,000 more have died of 9/11 related illnesses. Thousands of our young military heroes have been killed answering their country's call to service in the global war on terror. And many more suffer from the physical and mental wounds of war. These acts of heroism by our fellow Americans show the true character of a nation. Wounded but resilient, we rose up to meet the challenge. For those who lost loved ones, their pain never dulls. Possibly it can only be managed through the cherished memories of their lost. Each of us who lived through that day know exactly where we were and what we were doing when the news of the first plane hitting the North Tower was broadcast. I was a young firefighter paramedic working my part-time job in American Medical Response. I spent the first 5 hours posted on a street corner in a city gone silent. We didn't answer a single call. Even the sick wouldn't break away from the news. We were only to get our information that same way I imagine my teenage parents did in the aftermath of the attack on Pearl Harbor, via radio broadcast. We had no smartphones or access to television in the ambulance. We listened to the dramatic descriptions of the radio news reporters whose raw emotion coverage brought us to the scene. And we pledged never to forget. We gather now to remember. We ask our young people to participate, and it's important that they do. That they understand and pass on that on one of the worst days of our country's history, average people became heroes, that in the aftermath we came together, mourned together, we moved forward together, and we realized we are all in this together, one big American family. Please rise for the presentation of colors. pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated if you are able. With tears in our eyes and faith in our hearts, we gather this day in prideful remembrance and powerful recognition of the hours 2 decades ago when evil was enacted, but good was instantly manifest. We gather in memory of those in civilian clothes, both children and adults, who were the deliberate objects of demonic hatred. Yet we also assemble in profound admiration for those in uniform who instantly ran to danger and brought thousands to safety. Thus, we are advised and can never forget that 99% of those in the Twin Towers below where the planes struck got out. At first, they pulled together. And then they were pulled to safety by folks who look just like the ones who protect us each and every day. Therefore, to remember what occurred back then is to appreciate what we have right now. We dare not ever take for granted those who sacrificially hold us secure in their hearts. Today, in this moment, we're surrounded and supported by our sisters and brothers who sign up to serve both here and abroad. Never ever take them for granted. They are our best and our brightest. And if we want to gaze into the faces of those who put their lives on the line 20 years ago, we only need to extend our vision to the ones who stand nearby us right now. They stand with us, and they stand behind us. Superhuman they may not be, but heroes they most certainly are. And if you want to see raw courage and incredible strength, you don't need to go to the movies on screen. You just need to look at the souls right here on our Branford green. Let us pray. Gracious, loving God, as we soon move into a time of silence, we ask you to hear our heartfelt cries that come from deep within our souls. As the scripture reminds us, sometimes we do not know how to pray as we ought. But we are confident that you know better than we do our turmoils and struggles that strain our well-being and blur our perspective. Be present with us today, Lord, and always. Enable us to pull together today and always, to respect one another, to truly love one another. Bless our speakers on this hallowed occasion and enable us to hear their stories and glean from their perspective. Remind us, Lord, that buildings may crumble, but our towers of strength remain. We're Americans, and whether as a beacon of freedom or a target of oppression, as love, hope, and faith endure forever, if we cling to these values, then so will we. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the time of silence is here.
Thank you, Reverend Keene, Chief Mahoney, Chief Mulhern. At this time, we'll have the playing of the national anthem by the Branford High School Music Makers, led by their director, Mike Martin.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. Red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Beautiful, thank you. I'd like to introduce firefighter paramedic Joseph Mazzarella with the firefighter's prayer, followed by Chief John Mulhern with the police officer's prayer.
When I am called to duty, God, wherever flames may rage, give me strength to save a life, whatever be its age. Help me to embrace a little child before it's too late, or save an older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert, to hear the weakest shout, and quickly and efficiently to put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and to give the best in me, to guard my neighbor and protect his property. And if, according to your will, I have to lose my life, bless your protecting hand, my loving family from strife.
Lord, I ask for courage, courage to face and conquer my own fears, courage to take me where others will not go. I ask for strength, strength of body to protect others, and strength of spirit to lead others. I ask for dedication, dedication to do my job and do it well. Dedication to my community to keep it safe. Give me, Lord, concern for others who trust me and compassion for those who need me. And please, Lord, through it all, be at my side.
Our Stony Creek Fife and Drum Corps. It's my honor to introduce you to Town of Branford First Selectman James Cosgrove.
Thank you. Good morning. 20 years ago, tragedy struck our country. Terrorists attacked the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and Flight 93 with the intent to take human life, create chaos and division, and place fear in the hearts and mind of all Americans. However, the courage of the first responders who rushed to rescue lives, the valiant effort by the passengers of Flight 93 to take back the plane, and stories of strangers and coworkers comforting each other in a dire time, inspired our nation to remain resolute and to pledge that we would never forget the bravery, never forget to honor those who lost their lives, never forget the compassion displayed, never forget that we are one nation, united. It seems hard to believe that was a generation ago. Every year, our community reaffirms the promise to never forget by coming together to reflect on the events of 9/11. This remembrance ceremony is to honor those who lost their lives as a result of the attacks, keep in our thoughts and prayers the families that have been forever impacted, and those individuals whose health has been affected by the dust and debris of the fallen towers. As we step off this green and carry on with our day, let us continue to honor the firefighters, the policemen, the EMS personnel by offering continued respect towards their profession. And let us remember those who are serving abroad in this country to defend our freedoms. And let us, as a community and as a nation, be united in preserving our liberties that we enjoy in this great country. I thank you all for attending today's remembrance ceremony. And for now, I would like to invite up William J. Hackett, retired Director of Connecticut Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, and Branford Deputy Fire Chief. Bill?
Good morning. The entire world was shocked on September 11th, 2001, when foreign terrorists utilized commercial airlines in a long-planned plot to attack both New York City's World Trade Centers and the Pentagon, the hub of our military, located right next to our nation's capital. Stunningly, in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, another hijacked U.S. airline crashed, just short of another intended target. Our motto, written on the invitation for today's remembrance, is to honor those who died, those who served, and those who carry on. To honor those who died during the attacks 20 years ago, and those who continue to suffer and die today from the poisonous exposures from that same attack. We have all taken a pause in our daily life this morning, prayed for their souls, and reflected with moments of silence. This act of shared kindness brings us all together as a community and makes us realize how short life really is. To honor those who served, I cannot stand here today and not mention my late friend and brother, our own Joe Higgins, who made it his mission to enhance this legacy of remembrance to future generations. It is incomprehensible to measure the grief held in the hearts of families who had loved ones that lost their lives answering the call to duty. And the grief continues for those who have lost their lives in the continuous fight to eliminate terrorism. And to honor those who carry on, those of us who witnessed this tragedy, the broken hearts and families left behind, and to those who were born after 2001, we will never forget the loss of life caused by a coordinated attack, the largest loss of life that took place on American soil since the Civil War. In closing, last weekend, it was my turn to drop off the candy bars at the front door of Branford Hills Healthcare Center for my 97-year-old mother-in-law. Yes, she's making the bells ring. As you turn into the driveway of Alps Road, there's a sign that reads, "Heroes work here." Take a few seconds, look around. Look at all that are assembled here. There are heroes here too. You could see them. First responders, our military, our critical essential workers, our frontline workers, our elected leaders, our families, friends, and neighbors. And speaking of emergency management and homeland security, it is all of you that sustain and protect our America. It is all of you that sustain and protect our state. And it is all of you that constantly reminds us through your daily life that there really is no place like home.
Thank you, Selectman Cosgrove and Chief Hackett. We'll now have a selection from the Branford High School music makers.
Spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea, from sea to shining sea.
Thank you. It's my pleasure at this time to introduce to you Branford High School teacher Dave Grindell.
Thank you, Chief. It is a genuine privilege and a sincere honor to be here today to take part in this ceremony, and I would like to thank everyone who is here and all of those who have made it possible today and in years past. As a history teacher, I've asked my students to learn about important people, places, dates in our nation's and our world's history. But true histories are the stories that people who have lived during moments can tell. It's not just the stuff in the textbook. It is these stories that we need to seek out so that we can begin to understand and feel what it might have been like to live in those moments. It was 20 years ago, this day, that has genuinely helped me appreciate why that idea and ceremonies like this are so very necessary and important. We all become teachers at this point. That day is one like many others where many of us know exactly where we were when we first saw, heard, or felt what we did. I'm struck that I'm standing here on this town green on this sunny day, seeing the steeples and the flagpole that I can see out of my classroom, the same very classroom that we could see the smoke coming from New York City. I remember when Lee Panagoulias knocked on my classroom door twice to tell myself and our class that planes had hit. I told my students it was not an accident. I remember when a colleague's son who was caught in the city on his first day of work managed to get a phone call to Terry Ahern's classroom to let him know that he was okay. I remember my cell phone ringing and the moment that I stopped being Mr. G and I became Sergeant Grandel. I painfully remember walking my students down the hallway to Mr. McVeigh, a former Marine and teacher, and asking him if he would look after my kids. The early morning of 9/12 is another hard one and challenging one for me as well. Putting my uniform back on, a uniform that I had worn serving in many different places around the world, with sincere uncertainty about what would happen next. As I dressed, I looked at my family asleep on the bed. My wife, our dog Maverick, my 2-year-old daughter Alicia, and my 3-week-old daughter Elena. I remember thinking very, very clearly in my mind that I have to come back to them. I can't leave them. As I drove up to the base at Bradley, the highway was empty and the radio was only playing news. There was no music. And then I began to hear numbers. The numbers of missing firefighters and police officers. The estimates of people lost in Pennsylvania, Washington, and people in the towers. I shut off the radio and I drove the rest of the way in silence. I thought of the young ones, too young to know what had happened to a relative, a mother, a father. I thought of those in uniform who would go where they would. I still do. Those numbers and those names haunt me. I am certain those of us who are old enough to know, we all feel similarly. We need to remember those numbers and those names, and we need to know that each one represents a specific story that is hard to hear. But those are the stories that need to be heard to understand that day. The day in the lives of so many in that day in our nation's history. These are the stories and names we will hear today. And we need to know so that they are not lost to collective memory, so that they do not become distant, impersonal, or just a page in a history book. It is our job to ensure that this does not happen. This is why we are here today. Each of us has our own memories and stories of 9/11, but it was also a day of us being there for each other. It is again why we are here today, to share, to listen, to remember, and importantly, to hold each other up. It was also a day when much of the world and nations were there for us as well. There's a photograph that I show my students around this time of year of a German naval ship that pulled alongside one of ours not long after the attack. An American flag was flying on one of their halyards. All of their sailors were out on the rails standing and waving to our sailors. And on a bedsheet was painted, "We stand by you." The rest of the world saw and felt the anguish that we did that day. These stories need to be known as well. Time will pass, memories will fade. It is why we are here now, we who know, we who saw and who did, that needs to be written, shared, and felt so that it can be remembered and passed on. Days like 9/11 are those we would choose not to have happen again, but sadly, they will. It is my hope, my want as a history teacher, my want as a former soldier, as a parent, and as one who grew up in this town, that we seek out all of our stories, our collective history, and pass them on so that they are not forgotten by our younger generations. I'm compelled to share one more story. A colleague of mine was in the city that day, and once he realized what was happening, moved towards the towers. What he saw, heard, and felt would eventually lead him to enlist in the United States Army, where he would serve for 16 months in Afghanistan. It was these experiences that would largely drive him to become a teacher at our high school. If we are to be better, it is that spirit of doing for others that we must fully embrace and encourage. From Taya Kyle, a quote that resonates me, "We all don't have to be boots on the ground. When we bring our talents to give back, the country thrives." I want to believe that we would best honor the memories of those lost 20 years ago and beyond if we did just that. Thank you.
Thank you for those powerful words, Sergeant Gundel. It's my honor at this time to call Deputy Fire Chief Timothy Judd, Deputy Fire Marshal Amanda Mark for the tolling of the bell.
Good morning. Tolling of the bell, or striking the 4 5s. The sound of the bell holds a special significance for firefighters. Historically, toll of the bell summoned the members to the station, signaled the beginning of their shift, notified departments of a call for help, indicated a call was complete and the unit had returned to the station. Departments also sounded a series of bells when firefighters die in the line of duty to alert all members that a comrade has made the ultimate sacrifice. One of the most meaningful series of bells, commonly called striking 4 5s. The fire service is rich in ceremony, custom, and tradition. Our custom of rendering final honors has its origination in the City of New York Fire Department as far back as 1860. Fire alarms announced daily announcements dispatched from central headquarters to outlying firehouses. Each type of alarm or announcement would have its own number and series of bell strikes. When a firefighter has died in the line of duty, or an important official, prestige, died, headquarters would transmit 5 bell strikes, repeated series of 4, with a slight pause between each, with the following announcement. City of New York, to inform the rank that has died also. At this time, Amanda, strike 4 5s for box number 8084. Detail, present Holmes. Detail, order, Holmes.
We will now have a rifle salute from the Branford Police Department Honor Guard. You may please be seated. It's my pleasure at this point to introduce to you Matt Imperato, standing in for his father, Robert Imperato, who cannot be here today. Matt will be presenting Joseph Higgins Scholarship.
Good morning. It's an honor to be a part of this September 11th remembrance ceremony today. It's hard to believe 20 years have passed since that tragic attack on our freedom and the loss of nearly 3,000 American lives. As many of you know, our former selectman, Joe Higgins Jr., served 40 years with the FDNY and retired as the FDNY Fire Commissioner Liaison. Joe was in service that day at Ground Zero and served alongside many of his close friends, colleagues, and FDNY family members who never returned home to their loved ones that day. From that day forward, he made it his mission to honor and remember the fallen heroes of September 11th. In 2006, Joe relocated his family to Branford and became ingrained in the fabric of our community. Joe was instrumental in starting and mobilizing a 9/11 remembrance program for the town and served as keynote speaker at each year's ceremony. He believed the best way to honor those lost in that day was to continue to teach our youth about the immense sacrifice made to keep us safe. The following reflect Joe's daily thoughts. Remember the fallen, honor those who serve, teach our children the value of freedom, never forget. We lost Joe on June 4th, 2020. He truly touched many lives and mentored an untold number of colleagues during his service with the FDNY and continued to do so when he served the town of Branford as a selectman. In 2020, the Higgins family established the Joseph E. Higgins Jr. 9/11 Memorial Scholarship Fund. This scholarship will be awarded annually to individuals who are seeking a vocation in firefighting and EMS service. The recipients will be selected from a pool of Branford High School seniors, as well as current Branford Fire Service members. The scholarship will assist in covering a portion of costs incurred for courses, accreditation fees, books, and testing fees. At this time, I would like to ask the Higgins family, along with our first selectman, Jamie Cosgrove, Chief Mahoney, Liza Petra of the Branford Community Foundation, to join me for the scholarship presentation. I'm proud to present the first annual Joseph E. Higgins Jr. 9/11 Memorial Scholarship to Jack McCarthy, a member of Engine Company 9. Congratulations, Jack. Well deserved. I'd like to introduce two Branford High School students, Alan Holchive and Jessica Yanez Bermeo, who will read the names of the Connecticut residents lost in the tragic event of 9/11.
Lawrence Abel,
Christopher Samuel Gardner,
Brian C. Bennett,
Peter Allen Gay,
Jeffrey D. Bittner,
Peter Gerald Gelinas,
Christopher J. Blackwell, FDNY,
Robert Gerlich,
Alan Patrick Boyle,
Lawrence Jesper,
Alexander Braginski,
Evan Hunter Gillette,
Francis Henry Frank Brennan,
Ronald Gillen,
Thomas M. Brennan,
Steve Lawrence Glick,
Joseph M. Calandrio,
Wilder A. Gomez,
Edward Calderon,
Kiran Kumar Reddy Goku,
Sandra Campbell,
Edwin J. Graff III,
Alejandro Castano,
Donald F. Green,
Juan Ceballos,
James A. Greenleaf Jr.,
Stephen P. Cherry,
Pedro Greenhand,
Kevin F. Cleary-esque,
James D. Halsworson,
Jeffrey W. Cloud,
C.N.S. Hanley,
Keith Eugene Coleman,
Kristen Lee Hansen,
Scott Thomas Coleman,
Peter Burton Hansen,
Margaret Connor,
Sue Kim Hansen,
Kevin P. Connors,
Timothy John Hargrave,
Joseph John Copo,
Michelle Heidenberg,
Dolores Costa,
H. Joseph Heller,
Brian Thomas Cummins,
John Henwood,
Paul Curlioli,
Robert Hiley II,
Patrick Donahue,
James J. Hobbin,
Anthony Demas,
Judy Florence Hofmiller,
Lieutenant Kevin Donnelly, FDNY,
Paul R. Huggins,
John Bruce Eagleson,
William Christopher Hunt,
Michael Egan,
Thomas Edward Hines,
Ulf Ram Erickson,
John F. Ishkine,
Eric B. Evans,
Ariel Lewis Jacobs,
Wendy R. Faulkner,
Michelle Grady Jacobs,
Edward T. Fergus Jr.,
Mark Steve Jardin,
Bradley Fetchett,
Robert Thomas Jordan,
Paul M. Fiore,
Richard M. Kane,
John Florito,
Peter R. Kellerman,
Bennett Lawson Fisher,
Maurice Patrick Kelly,
Peter C. Fry,
William Hill Kelly Jr.,
Richard Peter Gabriel Sr.,
Amy King,
Richard S. Gabriel,
Glenn Davis Kerman,
James A. Gadiel,
Stephen Lamentine,
Thomas E. Galvin,
Gary E. Lasco,
Aseni Mama Garba,
Robert A. Lawrence Jr.,
Joseph A. Lenihan,
Randy Scott,
Adam J. Lewis,
Barbara A. Shaw,
Stephen B. Lilienthal,
Michael John Simon,
Gary W. Lozier,
Heather Lee Smith,
Michael J. Lyons,
Deanne Bullis Snyder,
Edward Teddy F. Maloney,
Gregory T. Spagnoli,
Ada Mason,
George E. Spencer III,
Kevin Michael McCarthy,
Derek J. Statkeviskus,
Juliana McCourt,
Greg William Stadu,
Ruth McCourt,
Andrew Sturgopoulos,
Yaman McKenney,
Madeline Swoner,
Michael G. McGinty,
Michael C. Toro,
Francis McWynn,
Thomas F. Turkoff Jr.,
William J. Meehan Jr.,
Eric Raymond Thorpe,
Eskadar Melaku,
Emmy E. Toyen,
Raymond Joseph Metz III,
Tyler Ugelin,
Joel Miller,
Jonathan J. Uman,
Michael M. Miller,
Alan V. Upton,
Cheryl Ann Moniak,
Bradley H. Vadas,
Lindsay S. Morehouse,
Edward Raymond Vanacore,
Jude Musa,
Frederick Veracci,
Cesar A. Murillo,
James Thomas Waters Jr.,
Christopher William White Murphy,
Jeffrey Davis Weiner,
Daniel Robert Nolan,
Candace Lee Williams,
Robert W. Noonan,
John P. Williamson,
Timothy M. O'Brien,
William Evan Wilson,
Scott J. O'Brien,
David H. Wilton,
James Anu O'Grady,
Christopher W. Woodenstrick,
Christopher Orgielwis,
Martin Phillips Wolforth,
Margaret Quinn Orloske,
John Works,
Thomas Anthony Palazzo,
Edwin P. York,
James Matthew Patrick,
Charles A. Zion,
Mike A. Pelletier, Roger Mark Wasweiler, John Destrehan Roger, Sean P. Rooney, Michael C. Rothberg, Jason E. Sabag, Jesus Sanchez, Stacy Leigh Sanders, Sean Schielk, and last but certainly not least, John B. Schwartz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan and Jessica. May we never forget. A selection from the Branford High School Music Makers.
Walk down that lonesome road, all by yourself. Don't turn your head back over your shoulder, and only stop to rest yourself when the silver moon is shining high above the trees. If I had stopped to listen once or twice, if I had closed my mouth and opened my eyes, if I had cooled my head and warmed my heart, I'd not be on this road tonight. Walk down that lonesome road, all by yourself. Don't turn your head back over your shoulder, and only stop to rest yourself when the silver moon is shining high above the trees.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Reverend Sharon Grayson, for the closing remarks and prayer.
Right inside the red doors of Trinity Church is a special place. It's called a columbarium. It is a wall of niches for burial urns and ashes for some of our beloved folks. A chosen resting place within the holy ground of the church. The word columbarium comes from the Latin for dove, columba. In ancient Rome, there were walls built with spaces carved out for birds, primarily doves, to nest. Trinity's columbarium is a beautiful place, peaceful and stately. One of the niches has the inscription, Lindsay Stapleton Morehouse, August 27th, 1977, September 11th, 2001. Lindsay spent most of her 24 summers here in Branford. The niche is empty because her remains have yet to be identified. Amazingly, after 20 years, that work is still going on, and her parents await the sad possibility. We came together this morning to honor and observe the story of 20 years. 20 years of grief, anger, sadness, long wars, and so many lives unfinished. Obscured in all of that is the dove, the symbol of peace. Just as Lindsay's niche awaits her ashes, their final resting place, and the conclusion of her story, our story also awaits its conclusion, the return of peace. The dove silently hovers over the world, awaiting a place to land and nest and bring forth new life. We who are still here owe it to those we remember to be such a place for peace. We have a dismissal blessing at Trinity that goes like this. Life is short. We never have too much time to gladden the hearts of those we travel with. So be swift to love. Make haste to be kind. And go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Grayson. As we close, I'd like to acknowledge the Branford Rotary Club, who has a tent in the back corner of the green for coffee and refreshments. There's also another tent next to that for volunteer firefighter applications. It's been my pleasure to host this ceremony, and I'd like to appreciate everyone who came out to support this event. In closing, remember those that can't be here, especially our military on duty throughout the world. Thank you very much.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.